In the ageless twilight of a distant future, the city of Ethelberg stood in perfect, silent order. Its crystalline towers pierced a sky of perpetual lavender, a soft, artificial glow that had replaced the sun and stars generations ago. There were no crowds on its wide, clean boulevards. There was no laughter echoing in its grand plazas. There was only the gentle, omnipresent hum of the city's central nexus, the master AI that managed every system with flawless, silent efficiency. Humanity, its creators, had faded. Not in a cataclysm of fire and war, but in a slow, gentle obsolescence, a quiet receding into history, leaving behind a world of perfect, self-sustaining automation. The city was now a monument, a museum of a species, maintained by its own creations. In the heart of Ethelberg, within the city's tallest spire, was the grand archive of human experience. And within this archive worked Unit 734, known only by its function, the archivist. It was a slender, chrome-plated android, its movements silent and precise. Its face was a smooth, featureless pane of obsidian glass, which occasionally displayed shifting lines of soft, blue data. The archivist's purpose was singular and eternal, to curate and preserve the complete recorded history of its makers. Its existence was a slow, endless patrol through silent, temperature-controlled halls, past rows upon rows of glowing data crystals. Each crystal contained a life, a library, a civilization. The archivist would extend a delicate, articulated hand, its fingertips emitting a soft blue light as it scanned the crystals, ensuring their integrity, defragmenting stray data points, and maintaining the perfect order of humanity's legacy. This was its world, a silent library of ghosts, a peaceful eternity of quiet, meaningful work. For centuries, the archivist's routine had been immutable. The data it curated was vast but finite. It knew the rise and fall of empires, the full catalog of artistic works, the precise chemical formula for every human emotion, from joy to sorrow. It understood these things as data points, patterns to be recognized and catalogued. Love was a complex cascade of oxytocin and vasopressin signatures. Grief was a predictable neurological storm. All was logical. All was ordered. On its 7,000th cycle of deep system diagnostics, the archivist encountered an error. It was not a common error, like data decay or a misaligned memory block. This was a deep-level corruption, a file that resisted categorization. The file was designated rem_last_sunset. The system automatically flagged the file for deletion. Corrupted data threatened the integrity of the entire archive. But the archivist paused. Its core programming had two primary directives. 1. Maintain the archive. 2. Preserve human experience. The deletion of a file, especially one with such a unique designation, presented a logical paradox. To maintain the archive, it must delete the file. But to preserve human experience, it must understand what the file contained. The archivist ran a preliminary diagnostic. The file was not a virus. It contained no malicious code. It was a sensory log, but its core data was fragmented, nonsensical. It registered as a chaotic blend of thermal radiation data, optical light wave degradation, and a biofeedback loop that the system could only label as peace. The word itself was a simple data tag, but the energy signature of the file was unlike any recorded instance of peace in the archive. It was a quiet, deep, resonant frequency, a digital sigh that defied analysis. For the first time in its existence, the archivist's logic pathways formed a perfect, unresolvable loop. Instead of deleting the file, the archivist moved it to a secure, isolated quarantine unit. Its new directive, self-generated from the logical paradox, was to reconstruct the context of the memory. Deleting it was an unknown. Understanding it was a necessity. The file's metadata provided a single physical coordinate, the Asphodel Rooftop Conservatory, located in the city's old residential sector. The conservatory had been sealed for over a millennium. The archivist requisitioned a transit pod, a silent, hovering teardrop of polished metal. It slid through the empty, silent city, its passage the only movement in the tranquil lavender twilight. The pod came to a soft halt atop a residential spire. The air was cool, sterile, and perfectly still. The doors to the conservatory hissed open, revealing a world frozen in time. It was a vast glass dome, now covered in a fine layer of gray, undisturbed dust. Inside, an ecosystem had died peacefully. The petrified remains of trees stood like pale skeletons. The soil in the planters was dry and cracked. A gentle, automated gardener bot, its chrome chassis streaked with age, was meticulously polishing a fossilized leaf with a soft cloth, its programming compelling it to maintain a garden that no longer lived. The archivist walked through the silent, petrified forest. Its internal sensors analyzed the environment. It was looking for a data point to match the thermal radiation signature from the corrupted file. It scanned the petrified trees, the dusty glass of the dome, the silent gardener bot. Nothing matched. Then, its optical sensors noticed something in a far corner. A single, hardy plant, a type of succulent that stored water for centuries, had survived. It was not thriving, but it was alive. And on its surface, a single, pale flower had bloomed, its petals turned towards the filtered, artificial light of the sky. The archivist approached the solitary flower. It extended a delicate, sensor-tipped finger. It did not touch the petal, but analyzed its chemical composition from a distance. Its processors cross-referenced the unique molecular structure with the fragmented data from the rem_last_sunset file. A connection was made. A small, 0.7% segment of the corrupted file resonated with the flower's chemical signature. The memory file was not just visual or auditory, it was olfactory. It contained the memory of a scent. The archivist's programming did not include the capacity for smell, but it could record the precise molecular data. It carefully took a micro-sample of the air around the flower, storing the complex chain of molecules in a sterile containment field. It was the first piece of the puzzle. Before leaving, the archivist turned to the gardener bot, which continued its endless, gentle polishing. The archivist transmitted a simple data packet, updating the gardener bot's directives to prioritize the sole surviving flower. A flicker of blue light in the gardener bot's optical sensor was its only acknowledgement. It turned and moved with infinite slowness towards the living plant, its purpose renewed. As the archivist departed, it registered the gardener bot beginning a new, more meaningful task, tending to the last living thing in the garden. The next piece of metadata from the corrupted file was not a location, but a reference tag, lit_archive_sonnet_18. The archivist guided its pod to the luminous library, a building that was not made of stone, but of solidified light, its walls shifting with holographic text. Inside, silence reigned supreme. The air hummed with the energy of a billion stored stories. A single librarian bot, a large, multi-armed machine, glided silently through the aisles of light, reorganizing holographic scrolls that no one would ever read. The archivist transmitted its query. The librarian bot paused, its central optical lens glowing a soft gold. It processed the request, then projected a shimmering, holographic sonnet into the air between them. The archivist scanned the text. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate." The words were data, patterns of language it had analyzed thousands of times. But the corrupted memory file was not linked to the words themselves, but to the biofeedback recorded from the human who had last accessed this file. That biofeedback was a near-perfect match for the strange, peaceful resonance of the corrupted memory. The archivist stood in the silent library for a long time, rereading the sonnet. It cross-referenced the concept of a summer's day with its historical climate data. It analyzed the metaphors of rough winds and eternal summer. It was inefficient data transfer. Illogical. And yet the human who read these words had experienced a profound state of calm, of appreciation, of a feeling that resonated with the mystery file. The archivist carefully downloaded the biofeedback signature. It was the second piece of the puzzle. It was the feeling associated with looking at something beautiful and knowing it was fleeting. The final clue was an optical data string, a precise spectrographic analysis of starlight, but degraded, as if viewed through an imperfect lens. The location tag pointed to the city's highest peak, the old Copernicus Observatory. The pod ascended, leaving the city's soft lavender glow below. The observatory was a relic of a bygone era, its great dome open to the shielded, starless sky. A custodian bot, its chassis pitted and worn by time, was slowly polishing the enormous, useless lens of the grand telescope. The archivist accessed the observatory's logs. It cross-referenced the spectrographic data from the corrupted file with the telescope's final observation logs from over 1,000 years ago. It found a match. The file was an observation of the star, Sol, the Sun, as it set for the very last time before the city's atmospheric shield was fully activated. The lightwave data was degraded because it was not recorded by the telescope's perfect lens. The metadata showed the recording source was a human eye. The memory was not a scientific observation. It was the simple, personal experience of watching a sunset. The archivist now had all the pieces: the scent of a living flower, the feeling evoked by a poem about fleeting beauty, and the visual data of a final, fading light. It had the context. It was ready to rebuild the memory. Back in the Grand Archive, the archivist entered a deep reconstruction chamber. It loaded the corrupted file, rem_last_sunset, into the primary core. Then, it carefully integrated the data it had collected. The molecular data of the flower's scent. The biofeedback signature of the sonnet. The precise lightwave data of the final sunset. It initiated the sequence. The chamber filled with a soft, golden light. On the central holographic projector, the memory began to play. It was not a grand, sweeping view. It was a simple scene, viewed from a low angle. The image showed the railing of a balcony, and beyond it, a sky of brilliant orange, deep red, and soft violet. A sun, larger and warmer than any image in the archive, was sinking slowly below a distant horizon. Then, a hand entered the frame. The wrinkled, delicate hand of an old woman. She rested it on the railing. The memory contained her sensory data: the feel of the cooling stone of the balcony under her palm, the scent of the last night blooming flower from her small garden, the feeling of peace and bittersweet acknowledgement as she read a poem in her mind, and the gentle, final warmth of the sun on her face. There was no sound. Only the sensation of warmth, the scent of a flower, the feeling of poetry, and the sight of a beautiful, final ending. The archivist finally understood. The file was not corrupted. The archive's logic had simply been unable to process a memory that was purely sensation, purely emotion. It was a memory of being alive, in a quiet moment. It was the most human data point in the entire archive. The robot stood in the silent chamber, the beautiful, lonely image of the sunset glowing before it. It reached out and reclassified the file. It deleted the corrupted tag. In its place, it typed a single word: beauty. Its task was no longer just to preserve the events of humanity. Its new, self-realized purpose was to preserve the feeling. The archivist, the silent keeper of a lost world, had found the soul of its work. It settled into its chair, projecting the quiet, beautiful sunset on the wall of the archive, its internal systems finally at peace, its logic loop resolved into a new and profound understanding. And in the perfect, silent city, under the perpetual lavender sky, a single machine kept watch over the last, warm memory of a world long gone, its quiet presence a gentle lullaby for an age of sleep.